Guys, I want to encourage you that you have not done too much that you cannot be saved by Jesus Christ. Right here, we have a testimony from Jerry Wills that's going to blow you away. And you're going to see what God has done in this man's life, and it's awesome. You don't want to miss it on this week of Becoming Branches. Come on in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Becoming Branches. My name's Adam Cook. Pastor Dustin McKinney is right here. Guys, I'm so excited about our special guest, Jerry Wills. He has an amazing, amazing testimony. I'm so excited to bring him on. We talked about in the past that we're going to have some fun guests. Now, some are a little bit lighter on the stories, right? We had hair, we had dating relationships. Right, yeah. This is a little bit of a different turn, but God has worked a miracle in this man's life. Go ahead and introduce yourself. How long have you been coming to Calvary? Just kind of let everyone know who you are.
Yes, I am Jerry Wells. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been praying about this and the opportunity to come and share and exactly what Adam just said, that this hopefully will go out and touch people. I've been coming to Calvary now for about 7.5 years. My wife and I have been. And it's just been a blessing. I've grown here. I love the people here. I love pastors, both Pastor Dustin and Pastor Roger, and just everything. Even praise.
Yeah, they're all right.
That one drummer had ADD. I think he's special and needs medicine. You have been coming to 7.5 years, and I'm going to say you're such a blessing. I've gotten to know you. I've been out to your house. You're such a giving guy. You've been on the care team. You really look out for people, and you and your wife are a blessing in Calvary Chapel.
Thank you.
So I just wanted you to know that.
Yeah, and we've talked you up, so don't screw it up tonight.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No pressure. Yeah. No, Jerry, well, you mentioned you are on kind of our welcoming committee, and that is kind of a big deal because, you know, you're kind of the first impression at Calvary Chapel. People come in, and you do a great job of, you know, being the administrator of that team and getting people together. So what kind of drew you to be a part of that and to lead that ministry that we have here at Calvary Chapel?
Well, actually, I was asked to do it several years ago to kind of do that. We didn't have anything like that here at Calvary. And so Mike Mathis asked if Deb and I would be willing to do something like that. So it kind of started from that, and we did it for several years, and we realized we needed some help. Sometimes, occasionally we couldn't be here, or maybe we'd have, 2 or 3 different couples or visitors on that Sunday. And so we needed some help. So we started trying to do that. And then one thing led to another. And now it's really working so much better because actually you implemented the process of getting more people in and rotating so that everybody only serves like once every 6-7 weeks to come in. And so we can cover for each other. And I'm there every week for the most part and just kind of backing up and kind of overseeing and doing the schedule. And so it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Blessing.
Well, you do a great job. We sure appreciate you with all you're doing. So Adam, I know you know Jerry's testimony, and every single person, right? We want to give the glory to God for our testimony because it's him. He's the hero of the story, right? God, Jesus is doing all of the work. But it is so interesting to hear everyone's different story and how God has just done this work of redeeming someone and making us more and more like Jesus. And sometimes, pulling us right out of the fire and saving our lives. And so when I think about your story in particular, it is very unique. We know it's not a story that I would have run into many times. And so I know we only have a limited time. So if you're okay with it, I would love to jump straight into your story, really God's story in your life. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your testimony. I mean, I've been walking with the Lord for some time now, but I know it didn't start that way. So we're going to kind of just take it over to you, Jerry.
Yeah. Well, I can't go into all the details because we just don't have the time, but grew up broken home. My parents divorced. My mother went into a mental hospital. I was in foster home for about 5-6 years. My father got remarried a couple times and then ended up going to live with him. Didn't have any love in our home or anything, and so I was always searching for something. I was searching for love. I was trying to be accepted and cared about. And so as I grew into my teen years and young adult years, I started searching in all the wrong ways. I started seeking it through women and sexuality and partying, etc. And so I had 3 children at a young age by 3 different women, and ended up going into sales and marketing. I became very successful in a career in that, and I was making some really good money. And I went in, finally ended up going into the car business. And my first 2 years in the car business, I was the #1 salesman in the state of Indiana for Chevrolet. And at 29 years old, I became the general manager of the largest Chevrolet dealership in the state. So I thought, this is great. My career was great. My personal life was a disaster. And that's what led me to the whole situation. I ended up leaving Indiana, quitting that job, went to California, trying to save a marriage. That didn't work. Ended up getting involved ended up getting a divorce out there, and I got involved with another young lady out there. Turned out to be kind of a love triangle, and I became just an emotional breakdown. And I became suicidal in thoughts and plans and so forth. And one thing led to another, and I ended up, over this love triangle, I ended up taking a man's life, and ended up going to prison as a result of that. And it's always going to be difficult to live with that, knowing that fact. But God has done amazing things as a result of that. When I was going through, you go through the trial process and so forth, and while you're doing that, you go through the county jails. And while I was in the county jails, I ended up turning my life over to the Lord. It was amazing how it happened. I came back from court one day, and there was a Bible on my bed, but it was not on the bed. It was between the walls and the bed, and it was up to the far end where nobody could have put it there through the bars, and nobody else in the cell did it. And I thought somebody was playing a joke on me. And so I picked that up, and I didn't know at the time, obviously, that was God. And so I started holding my hand up to go to chapel, and listening, and I heard the gospel. But we weren't able to go talk to the people. There was volunteers that came in. They shared the gospel. We had to sit in the pews. We couldn't get up and go talk to them. All we could do was raise our hand. And so I probably raised my hand 20 times, accepting the Lord, and came back and said, I guess he didn't want me. I guess I'm not accepted on what I've done. I've taken a man's life, and so I'm not going to make it. And so God put a man in my cell that happened to be a preacher's kid, and he was in for a paper crime. I never should have been in that segment of the jail because of what my crime was, but because I had no history and so forth, they put me in a tank, they call it. And so I started telling this guy what was happening, and he says, Jerry, he says, it's not like you're going to have bells and whistles go off all the time. It's not like that. You're rarely that way. And so he started explaining to me, and he started showing me in the Bible and telling me where to start reading. And man, it just opened up, and he gave me hope. Matthew 11:28 is a verse that has stuck with me from that time forward. Cast all your burdens on me. And Jesus, it was a struggle. I mean, it's a progress that I was going through. And I had to go through the process of the guilt, go through the trials and all that kind of thing, and then go into prison. But every step of the way, God had his hand on me and people that I was around. When I got to prison, I had a mentor there waiting for me. I didn't know him. And I was put in a situation where it was a reception center, and they, at the time in California, the inmates ran the prisons. They literally ran the prisons. And so there was a little small work crew of 55 people. And one of the people that ran it's called the psych department, where they test everybody that comes into prison. And so she selected me because I scored high on Scholastic. Like, she selected me and liked me to stay there on this little work crew and work for her. And I was headed to Folsom, one of the worst prisons in the country at the time. And she literally got me pulled off the bus twice to keep me there. And so she did. She finally got it done and kept me there. So for the first 5 years, I got to stay there. And it's a point system, so my custody level went down quicker. because I was living in a dorm. I know this may not make sense to a lot of people about how this all worked, but to see God do these things, and how he worked. And then I had this guy who was a mentor for me there in the dorm. And he would meet with me one-on-one, and we have little group Bible studies. And that was just amazing to watch what God did. And everywhere I went, and from there, after 5 years, they transferred me to another prison, Central California. God was working there. And then he moved me to San Diego, brand new prison opened up, and he moved me to San Diego. And it was a new prison that was opening, which is not something that most people want to do. I didn't, but I had no choice, because everything's territorial in prison. So everybody was establishing their territory. There was a lot of violence, a lot of stabbings and so forth, and everybody getting their territory established. And God put me in a position as a clerk for 17 years. I had been a clerk, and I was working for an associate warden, which is a pretty young position for an inmate to be working. And just turned out that the AW was a Christian. So, he'd keep me there working sometimes until 11, 12 o'clock at night when everything else was locked up. But we'd talk about the Lord and talk about God and so forth. Didn't even get a lot of work done sometimes. But, and there was a lot of programs. I got to go to Bible college while I was there. And I'm not just talking like correspondence. I'm talking about, we had professors come into the prison. That had never been done before. One came into the prison. I got to go to Bible college. We had prison fellowships, seminars, just one after another came in. And God just helped me to grow spiritually. But a real turning point in my life, after I had been walking with the Lord for 10 years, there's a program called Kairos. We're familiar with it because we had some people here that were doing it.
Yeah.
And this was the very first one at this prison in San Diego. And so I went to Kairos 1, and only went there because I was one of the leaders in the chapel program by this time. And the chaplain wanted 3 or 4 of us that were the leaders to go to this, because we were reluctant. We were skeptical. We heard they were Episcopalians and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so we were reluctant to go. And so we went because he wanted us to see what it was and then hopefully support it. From the time we walked in that door, we walked in, it's like walking down a gauntlet and just pouring out love to us and cheering as we're walking in. And they had cards that kids made up for us and telling us they had our name and prayed for us for like 6 months. And just things like that God did that was so touching and so transforming in my life. And I could just go on and on about all these things that God did. Like I said, lots of seminars and support to some degree from my family, although none of them lived out there. They're all back here. But we stayed in touch with our kids. That was hard. My sons were 11 and 15 when I went in, and my daughter at the time was 12 when I went in. And probably the hardest thing about all of it was my daughter passed away while I was in there. And she was the only one actually that came out. Well, my oldest son made it out for one visit. She came out a few times, and her husband was in the Air Force in Las Vegas, so that was fairly close. But that was tough. That was really, really tough. And I'm not saying that I didn't do battles. I got depressed at times. I asked the Lord, Lord, how much is going to be enough? Am I ever going to get out of prison? And I really didn't know that the way it works out there. I had a 27 to life sentence, which means that you have to go to the prison board, the parole board, before you can get approved to get out. And it's a process. Then it has to go to the full board. Then it has to go to the governor. One stroke of a signature by a governor, even if you're found suitable, everybody can turn it away. So it was really tough at times. And battling the depression, sometimes I didn't have suicide thoughts as far as going to do it, thinking, hey, that's the best way, things like that. Even after coming to war, sure. what God has done since. And I got out of prison in 2016, and was friends with currently my wife for years, and we wrote back and forth for a while. We really connected spiritually while I was in prison the last 5 or 6 years. And so when I got out, then we connected more than spiritually. And in October of that year, I was able to get my parole transferred back here. We got married. And so here we are, almost 8 years later, serving in Calvary Chapel. I got an awesome wife, very spiritual wife, and we just live on our life, and God's provided for us. Families all connected again.
Yeah. Wow.
There's like loads of questions. You know what I mean? You hear such an amazing story.
I'm trying to remember my question.
Yeah. So wow. I mean, that is amazing. So I want to encourage anybody out there who just heard that amazing testimony and you think to yourself, wow, okay, Jesus can rescue me and there is a plan for my life and I haven't done too much. And I know that's hard to talk about. I appreciate that.
Sure.
What was the total time of incarceration?
36 years.
36 years. And how soon after you were initially sentenced, salvation occurred?
It was actually occurred before I was sentenced.
Okay, so you got saved and then started your 36 year.
Yeah, I got saved in the county jail.
Yes.
Actually, while I was going through trial.
Wow.
So one of my biggest questions is, we know that Satan has absolutely no power against God. And so the tactics that he uses, right, lies, deception, things to get us not to trust the very source of our salvation and our power and our strength. And so when I think about your situation and the reality of the crime, the reality of the guilt, shame, those types of things. So if you would be willing, tell me a little bit more about that process of God walking you through this of, what happened and you are forgiven. Like, to me, I would see Satan really trying to pull the wool over your eyes saying that you're not.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that process and how God walked you through that.
Well, I think the first thing that I had to deal with was the guilt and the shame. And actually, that kept me from following through with suicide while I was in the county jail initially, because I'm not guilty of murder, and I can't let my family have to deal with that. And so I was fighting in court and so forth to try and prove I wasn't guilty of murder. I took his life, yes. And so then after I came to the Lord, it was a matter of the guilt, and I started realizing the control that God has over everything. And so I was saying, God, that bullet that killed him, you could have just moved it a fraction of an inch and he'd still be alive today. And so why didn't you do that, Lord? And why wasn't it me that was killed that night? He was a police officer. It was not in the line of duty by any means of the crime, and I said, he's trained, and it should have been me. Anyway, so dealing with that with God was a big part of the process that I had to go through with the guilt. And I guess to some degree, I was looking for a way out, trying to maybe even blame God. God, I know you could have done this, but you didn't. And so I had to come to the conclusion is we all have time. As James says, life is for the vapor. Some of us get to live longer than others and some don't. And so our time is already designated. And I had to come to the conclusion that, yes, I did what I did. I can't ever take that back. I'll always regret it. I always feel horrible and guilty. But yes, God could have stopped it. He didn't. I don't know why. It's not a question that I can answer. And so I had to accept that. And luckily, one day when I'm there with him, I'll get the answer to that.
So before this happened, let's say you're still back in Indiana, you're the GM at 29. Was there any thought in your life when money was rolling on and things were good, hey, I need Jesus? Was that even a thought?
No, nothing. Christians were weirdos to me.
So you knew maybe about God abstractly through you've heard of God or, but never a personal, like, you need God, or is God even real?
Yeah, no. We actually, when I was 11, 12 years old, we actually went to a church for a couple of years or so, but it was more like a social club. I don't ever remember anything about the gospel or anything. But so in that sense, yeah, I mean, we did, but no, I never ever gave God a second thought other than use his name thing.
See, I think that happens a lot, when you get the success with careers and you become your bank account becomes what you think you're successful at, right? And so a lot of people have this, oh, look at my cars and look at my property, and they don't even consider God. Like in the Bible, that man's filled in more barns, right? He sits back and, what am I going to do? Sell? I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry, and I'm going to tear down more and more. And God's like, you fool!
Yeah.
Tonight your soul is required of you. So that was just my question of at the time of, hey, I'm making serious money. I'm a GM. I'm the boss. Do I even need God? So with that answer, was it not until so when you saw the Bible, when you walked in that cell, you weren't thinking anything spiritually, right? I mean, when it was kind of up against the wall there, I mean, walk us through that of your view of what that meant to you.
No, I wasn't, although I will say this, that when I first was arrested, I remember sitting in what they call a holding cell. It was just an empty cement tomb, basically. And they had taken everything away from me except my pants. I'm sitting there, I'm sitting on the floor because there's nothing else to sit on. And I'm sitting there saying, how did I get here? What have I done? God, if you're real, how did I get here? So I did have a thought about God at that point, but I didn't know if he was real. I didn't know, and it came to the point where when that Bible, and I don't remember the exact timing, sure that Bible was in there or if this was before or after that, but I do remember thinking that, if God is real, then I've tried everything in the world but that. I have tried, money, sex, drugs, alcohol, partying, traveling, everything except God. So there was a point there that I said, okay, I've tried everything but God, so let me try God. And that's kind of what got me going to the chapel in there and started to read the Bible. And I didn't know where to read. I started reading in the front in Genesis. And then one guy, he put the PK in there, prison. Pastor did, helped me out.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think about, I oversee our youth group here. We had finished Esther not so long ago.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this free will versus, God's sovereignty. And it's like, yes, and yes, and Mordecai, right? When he tells Esther, if you don't do this, God is going to raise up it's going to come, salvation for the Jews is going to come because God has already promised this. So we know he's going to be faithful.
Okay.
But maybe a time such as this has come and put you in this specific position for you to be that avenue and to get God's blessing for being obedient. And so I think about all these little things, right, of people choosing to be obedient in the position, and you in the positions that God had put all of you in, ultimately for his glory, right, and his kingdom to be furthered with you coming to Christ. Now, how many people you have ministered to? Yeah. So that's my next question. So it was about 8 years ago, right? You've been released. So what has post-prison life been like for you? What are things that God has you doing currently and ministering for his kingdom?
Well, I think in looking back, I can see that as most of us know, or at least some of us know, God doesn't let our experiences go to waste. Yeah. And so I went into sales because I was pretty good at it and I was a people person. And so God has taken that now, and everywhere I go, I can start up conversations with people and just be friendly. And I enjoy doing that, being kind, because this is where God has brought me to with my heart. Now it's not about what can I get from that person. It's what can I give that person. And it's so amazing that about a year and a half ago, through my oldest grandson, he had a friend called, I said it was Marcus, the Midland Bar Retreat. and he was talking about his businesses. So workforce chaplains, where they go into organizations and businesses, and they offer chaplain services, and sign a contract with them. And so we go in to serve the employees, whatever needs they may have. And it doesn't matter what their religious belief is, but that's what we do. We're Christian, but that's what we do. And so when Casey was, Marcus already knew about me because they'd been meeting for Bible studies for a while. And so he was telling about the business, and he says, my grandpa might be interested in something like that. He says, I'd like to talk to him because he already knew about me. And so we met for an interview 2 days later. And I had already accepted another job, just a part-time job, driving forward for
That's right.
Henry.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah. And so we met on a Wednesday. I was supposed to go get my physical for them on Friday. And we met on a Wednesday, and we talked over lunch, and he hired me on the spot. And so I went in and took the process of going through to get my chaplain's organization. And for the last year and a half, I'm serving as a chaplain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How awesome. Praise God.
Yeah.
Praise God.
It is amazing. And I just can't reiterate it enough for those of you who are watching that you have not done too much. You are not out of the grip of Jesus Christ. I went to C1 trucking school in March, and I had a friend of mine named Curtis who said this exact thing. He said, Adam, you don't know what I've done. I've done too much. And you immediately, and I think I told you this, you immediately came to my mind. I remember you telling this very testimony, the elongated version out at our, was it the chili cook-off?
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, it was like, hey, by the way, I'm Jerry. And I thought that was so incredibly bold and brave to do that. You had a similar testimony when you took over and joined the, remember that? And you joined the staff and everything. I was like, that is so bold. That is so incredible.
Yeah.
But he said that, he couldn't be used and he's basically wasted. And I'm like, no, brother, no, you're not. God is so close to the brokenhearted and contrite spirit. And did you ever think of Romans 8:1 while you were in prison?
Well, yeah, but after I had been studying for a while, yeah, absolutely.
But wasn't that such a free, liberating verse? So when you read that, it had to just leap off the page of just relief.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, absolutely, brother.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Jerry, I appreciate you so much coming on the show. You have an amazing testimony, and I just feel led by the Spirit to say that your testimony doesn't have to be Jerry's testimony, right? Jerry has an incredible story of how God has worked in his life. And you may be one of those people who grew up in a Christian home and you've been serving Christ for all your life. Praise God. That is a testimony that can reach just as many people for the gospel of Jesus. And so, Jerry, we're thankful for you, brother. You're such a blessing here at Calvary. I really appreciate you on the show.
Jerry, I want to thank you for joining us. I know that is a difficult topic. I know that sometimes when you are asked to talk about something like that in a testimony, it is very situational. Guys, if you have a testimony like that and you have a burden to share that, use wisdom and discernment. This isn't something that you just walk in front of a Thanksgiving dinner or just pop open and just say, hey, guys, guess what? But if you're felt led to, listen to the Holy Spirit. I know Jerry used wisdom and discernment as a favor to come onto the show to be a minister to you guys. So hopefully that helped. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us on this week and episode of Becoming Branches.
See you next time.